All right, what's up, everybody? So here we are today with another episode of the Introspection Hour with Brian Patrick, where we talk about thoughts, feelings, and emotions associated with everything that life has to throw at you. So my name is Brian.
And I'm Patrick.
And today we were going to talk about relationships. And so, Patrick, first of all, congratulations. I just found out you're having a kid.
Yeah, the second
child, correct?
Second child, yep.
Oh, man. You don't know if it's a boy or girl yet, correct?
No, not yet. It's still too early right now. We'll know in a couple weeks, but yeah, it doesn't matter. Boy, girl, they come out healthy. You're pretty happy.
All right, dude. Well, I mean, just the fact that, I just want to say I'm happy for you. And I want, something's been really bothering me these last couple of days. And I just kind of want to just share with you and perhaps the audience who may be dealing with this same situation. It's, so as you know, I came out of a long-term relationship. It's been almost 2 years since I had a separation with who I thought who was the love of my life. My biggest struggle right now is I don't know how to love again, straight up.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
It does, because you had a certain definition of love and it got shattered, right? And so you don't know what was right, what was wrong. People always say there's pros and cons. You're like, what? How do you make sense? And it just doesn't make sense, You try to define it again, it just doesn't get defined in the same way. So it totally makes sense what you're going through and where you're at right now.
Because I was thinking about this just the last few days, right? Where it's like, do I want to be in another relationship? And the big part of me is that I'm afraid, dude.
Yeah.
Like one is I don't want to get heartbroken again, right? Because you were there with me during my hardest time, and you helped me pull me out of that well, that deep and darkest moment of myself. And two, I got so used to being just alone, like being independent and living by myself, that I don't know how to be in a relationship again. Like, can you just give me some advice? Like, what do I do? I
mean, just because people get married doesn't mean that they figured it out. Sometimes they get married and then they realize what love is. I don't know. For me, I remember when I broke up with my first serious relationship and my ex then, it was weird because I had a completely different experience. It's almost as if like the initial breakup, right after the breakup, I was relieved. I was like, yes, How long
were you guys together for?
We were together for like 4 years, almost 4 years, give or take.
4 years?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. And, afterwards, I kind of grieved a little. I kind of went back down. But the definition of love, at least to me, has changed so much. And especially for me in marriage, love and the capacity or like the amount that I love is growing, I would say, just because there's love for my wife, then there's love for, our life and our marriage, and then our daughter right now is our first daughter, and then we have a second kid coming. So for me, love is expanding, and it's in a completely different place than you. So I think, but what connects us a little bit more is, yeah, man, like when I think back to those days, I didn't even realize fully the definition of love, even after proposing to my wife now. So how would you even, I guess, what have you even like figured out about what your definition of love is?
I used to think that the cliche was just that love conquers all, right? No matter what it is, as long as you have love, you guys can get through anything.
Sure.
And that was the time where I'll say it, I was very naive.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I was still considered a kid. This is, when I met her, we were in college, right? Like I was going through grad school and we pretty much grew together.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing, and I'll say, is that a part of my life, the person that I identified myself with was a part of that relationship. And when that relationship ended, I lost a part of myself. And I feel like part of that self that I lost was the part where I knew how to love another person. Mm-hmm. And going back to your definition of what I feel love is, I don't know anymore, dude. That's honestly, I don't know. Like I don't even know what I want in a partner.
You know, I remember when I was dating Lena, my wife, and we had every expectation our relationship wouldn't last.
Wait, why is that?
Because as soon as we were getting set up, and like our mutual friend, and I had just gotten a job in DC, and we were both in LA, so we hadn't even met, and I pretty much had to tell her I'm moving cross country. So already the cliche of long distance relationships don't work, and in one sense we're an anomaly. We worked, but so we both went into it. Oh, this isn't gonna work. We'll just see each other maybe once or twice, and it'll be nice. And then we kept seeing each other until I left, and then afterwards we kept going. So I'm like, that's weird. And at that point, I would say I had no idea what love meant. I had the Catholic definition. I had the cliches, the romantic novels, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Truly inside of me, though, I had no idea. I was just going with it. Some girl was interested. Not some girl, my wife. She was. I'm gonna get in trouble for that one.
It's all right. It's all right. She was a girl back then. Okay. Wait, how old were you guys when you first met?
I should know this off the top of my head. We've been married 3 years, and then we were together for about another 3 years, like 2013. So about, what am I? Maybe 30, around 30 or so.
You were 30, right?
I was
30. She's younger than you.
Yeah, she's 3 years younger than me. And so she was like 26, 27.
Okay.
So late 20s, and then basically early 30s for me. We both didn't really understand love, and I think as our relationship together got forward, like kept going, we went through different periods to figure that out. So I would say, especially in relationships, I mean, I didn't really realize it until I was in a relationship with my wife, what love is. So it's so hard to say on the outside. It like before you meet someone that happens to be the love of your life, I think you really don't understand it. I don't know. I could be wrong. Some people might already have an idea, but
So you were talking the first time with your first girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
You were dating for 4 years.
Yeah.
It's a difference between the relationship you had with, we'll just call her girlfriend number one, to your wife. Now, like, well, how did you know? Like, you know what? This is just, despite we've been together for 4 years, I don't think this is the right person. Like, how did you know?
The girlfriend number one pretty much said, not a proposal, but like, do you think you're going to marry me? Are you, do you see a future for us? And I kept hesitating. I couldn't answer it. Like, we've been together for 4 years, and we were just together to be together. You know what I mean? Like, when you have someone just as a companion, you just have that person that you're calling a girlfriend that you love, or, some point in the relationship, you're like, man, I really love this, other person, girl, guy. And then it just faded. And at that point, you were just going through the motions of having someone next to you. So that's the situation I was in. But she kept asking me.
So when she asked you the first time, you didn't really even answer her straight up. You just around blew it off, and
around year 2, she brought it up. Oh, do you see a future? I go, oh yeah, maybe. Like every time I was wishy-washy with my answer. Maybe, yeah, I think so. No, I don't want to talk about it. Blah blah blah. And then at the very very end, it just like pretty much you have to answer this question, Patrick. And I'm like, I couldn't speak. I literally was speechless. Like, as much as I love talking now, like I couldn't talk, right? And I remember because we were in like a strip mall. We were just outside. Like, we just happened to be wherever there was a parking lot. And like, she kept asking me. I'm like, and she goes, well, if you don't know now, it's not going to happen. And I think we should end it. And she ended it. And then so she ended the relationship. And that devastated me. I'm like, wait a minute, and I was about my pedestal. I'm like, what do you mean
no one breaks up with me? Come on,
no one
Patrick.
breaks up with me. Yeah, and and so like I was devastated, and I didn't realize it until looking back on it, but I had already checked out of the relationship in year 2, year 3. I just happened to have a girlfriend next to me and went through the motions. But that was a defining moment. I couldn't answer it. It's like, do you want to get married? If you're forced to it, if you're like not sure and you just kind of, yeah, I guess, dude. Like,
oh no, you gotta cut that off right there.
Yeah, it's not gonna. Thank goodness she did that. Like, I'll say that. Like, there's one saving grace. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because if I had gotten married to her, I would have been so miserable. Maybe it would have worked out later, and we would have figured something out. But I don't think so, man. Comparing that relationship and all the ins and outs to my wife now and the relationship we have. It was very, very different.
Is there any specific defining, if I want to call it an element or characteristic that you said, in year 2 that you just didn't want to, you just knew you didn't want to be with her? Like, no. What was it? Is there anything
for girlfriend number 1?
Yeah, like you just how do you know that you wasn't it?
So for me, it was more about how much does your mind wander? Okay, so if you're in a relationship, for me at least, I kept thinking about or imagining or considering or looking at other women. Like, I think I could be with her. Or, she's pretty. But those thoughts are really dangerous. If you start having those thoughts, you're not really committed to that relationship, in my opinion. But looking back, I think that was it. Like around year 2, year 3, I was more interested in wondering if I could find another girlfriend than I was keeping my current girl at that time.
So not to put you on the spot here, do you feel the same way now with your wife? Where you're like, I feel like I could be with that person, or like basically what you just said. So you don't have those thoughts at all?
No, especially as I was getting ready to propose to my wife. A lot of things had happened for us, but the one thing that gave me comfort is I really didn't see myself with another woman, another girl, no matter what they looked like, no matter what they were, whoever they were. Like it just didn't register. It wasn't like a feeling that was coming. My mind wasn't wandering on that. So that was one for me understanding of like, okay, this girl's done something to me, she's invaded my heart. Like,
yeah. No, I mean, I was there, dude. I was there from when you guys first met.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, our first date was it was that one ice festival in Long Beach.
Yeah.
That was essentially when I first met your wife now, and you guys went from just being friends to proposing, where I filmed your proposal, to going through your wedding, through all of that stuff. And I've never seen you so happy, man. So I just want to say, like, I'm a little jealous of what you have.
Well, come on. I remember you specifically telling me that it was such a good thing I broke up with my girlfriend number 1. Like, you were like, man, I didn't like her at all. And I'm like, dude, where's the broness? Why didn't you tell me before, And
it's hard to say, right? Because there's sometimes it's like I just don't like, but it's like why, why? It's hard to really say when you're in the moment, like why she wasn't a good fit for you until you see yourself with another person where she brings out pretty much the best in you. And I think that's what any partner should do, is bring out the best in their partner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because even for you in that relationship you were talking about with your ex, like, I mean, it got to the point where I felt like I had to tell you, and I tried a couple of different ways of I don't think she was the right one for you, and it was hard because it wasn't getting through to you. I could tell. So I don't know. I guess
let me ask you.
Remember that?
I thought, in my opinion, the relationship was perfect. Obviously, every relationship had its faults, right? There's no such thing as a perfect relationship.
Sure.
In your opinion, what was it that was wrong? Like, I didn't see it. Obviously, I had my love goggles on, but in your perspective, what was the fault in my relationship?
I think slowly it was a push and pull for her of what happened, where she pulled you along in a way that you were kept getting attracted to her and having fun, but then she pushed you into being a different person. Like you were changing and changing in ways that I'm like, I don't think he likes that, you know? And he's just doing that because that's his good-hearted nature. He's not doing that because he likes it. Like it was more obvious on the outside, right?
Like changing in what way? So can you? I don't see the change. Actually, I don't. It's hard for me to see it.
Changes in a lot of the responses of how you were speaking. We would be talking about something, and you're like, no, it's a little bit more crisper. Like right now, you're a lot more open. You're a lot more engaging. Before it was just like, very short answers or whatever. And then I think the bigger things is when your habits and your trips kept changing, but then she brought in that monotonous cycle into your life. The one thing I think that like she scheduled everything, right? Like, you guys were on a schedule. Like you guys were living and breathing off a calendar. And
essentially, yes.
That held you down so much, I think, is what I noticed. Because you're not the type to like schedule everything out, plan everything out. And she was a planner. Like she really loved to plan and she wanted to be that prepared, but that wasn't you, man. Like I remember growing up, you would just randomly go up to Big Bear and snowboard. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? Like,
I still do that now, actually. Not the Big Bear, but I just grab like, you know what? It's a nice day. Let's just go out and do something. I'm more of a spontaneous person. And you're right. I don't really like obviously planning is important for certain things, but obviously for the grand scheme of things, I just like to just go with the flow,
Sure. And that was what was missing. You were so scheduled that there was no unpredictability. It just wasn't you. Everything you were doing was just because you were good enough to do it. It wasn't because you were having fun. You were good enough and you had time, so you went to play basketball. Like you went to the gym, I don't know, every day or every 3 days or something like that. Like it was so planned out. And that's when, I just kind of noticed disengagement. Like there was all sorts of things that I was just little, tidbits. But the biggest thing I think was the spontaneity was gone for you. That's really important for you. I wouldn't be prepared, right? Like I couldn't go with you crazy, like into those Big Bear trips when we were in, I think it was like high school and early college. Primarily because college was kicking my butt and I was barely getting by. But I was like, no, I want a 4-wheel drive, or at least want a Jeep, and I want a snowboard rack. So I was saving up for that stuff and then like going once or twice a year. And you were like, screw it, man, just throw it in the back of the Honda Accord, right? And just go, like change out a tire in the middle of the mountain, like crazy, dude. Like I'm surprised we really didn't see you on the news and just like fall off that cliff, man. Like that road is so bad.
I'm a daredevil, man. So, but
serious.
Looking back at the relationship, like with Eva, at some point I could tell. So I started learning something called attachment theory. Are you familiar with that at all?
Not too much.
Okay, so I'll kind of bring this up, but so there's generally 3 different attachment theories that every single person has, right? So for example, there's a secure attachment type, there's an anxious attachment type, and there's an avoidant attachment type.
Okay.
Eva was an avoidant attachment type of person, meaning in a relationship, she's not the type to cling on to a person, right? You know how? Let's just face it, she wasn't very good at showing her affection.
Yeah.
Right. I would try to approach her. I would be the one who would hug her. I'd be the one to show that I cared for her. And her way of showing that she cared for me was basically, here's my credit card. And it almost felt like, what do you call those people where, like a sugar mama, right? And I know you guys all make fun of me for this. Where it's like, God, Brian, where are you going this time? Where's Eva taking you? Where it's like, serious. Well. And that's what it felt like.
For the people listening, in the beginning of Brian's relationship with his ex, we're like, dude, he got himself a sugar mama. Like, she's taking him all sorts of places, and so there was a little bit of jealousy, by the way. But we got over that a lot quicker than you did.
I mean, but so that's how was showing her affection
Yeah.
towards me. It's kind of like, I'll take care of you, but she
Sure.
wasn't necessarily giving me the wants and needs that I
Yeah.
needed in a relationship. And have you read the book The Five Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman, or are you familiar with it?
No, you do a lot more reading now than I do, but
Okay, so the five love languages are physical touch, quality time, receiving gifts, words of affirmation, and acts of service.
Okay.
And generally speaking, what the author of this book is saying is that if you're able to fulfill your partner's needs based off her love language, then your relationship will be happy. You guys will have a good, loving relationship. Does that make sense?
it does. That makes sense. Although the author probably says you need like an element of all five in order to have a really good relationship. I would say the other thing I would add in there is one thing that helped us, me and my wife and I right now is forgiveness. If you can't have forgiveness in the relationship, you can't build trust, because vulnerability brings failure. Failure needs to be responded with forgiveness, and forgiveness brings more love. I think is that's the mindset that I have. That's the process, is that you need something to understand how much you can trust the other person. How much is that other person going to really give up for you? Those five love languages, what I think I would say is, I identify with all five of them. There's different levels to which you do that. I would just add forgiveness.
Okay.
How do you
When you say
know
forgiveness, can you clarify? So you mean like, honey, I broke the dishes, or honey, I crashed your car. Are you talking about forgiveness in that sense, or?
No, those are material things. I mean, if you're bickering and fighting over that, good luck, right? I mean, just from my personal opinion, that's a hard life. Forgiveness, whenever you hurt, let's say you don't do one of those five love languages, or you do one that happens to be important to the other person at that moment or in that period, right? So physical touch, you said that was lacking from your ex. To move past it, there would need to be a level of forgiveness. Like, it wasn't intentional. That's just, I'm not used to it. Or there has to be something in the conversation between the two people to understand why there was a lack, or there wasn't one of those, five love languages. It has to be followed up with, this wasn't intentional. Or if it is intentional, then you have a problem. But if it's not intentional, then the openness to be able to talk about it with the other person is so important, in my opinion. So
you talk about communication, right? So communication is actually a really important factor in any relationship. Like, between you and Lena, would you say you guys have a very effective communication style?
We have different layers. Okay, so we had to figure out our text messaging language.
God, okay.
Communication, right? Like, because, dude, how many relationships these days are like being fought over text messages, right? I mean,
you didn't send me a smiley face, man. I don't know how to, like, were you happy? Were you like serious? Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Right? Like, reading all into this one text message, and you just sent it because you were walking up the stairs, or I don't know, like, whatever reason. So that took us a while. That took us a while to figure out, communication wise. And then after we got married, it's the body language, the facial expression, the slugging the shoulders, right? Like, she asks me to do something, I'm like, there's a specific body language communication that you need to put in check. It doesn't mean you have to be on all the time, but at some point it has to, the negative ones have to go away, in my opinion. Both people have to work on it, and the only way you know that is if the other person tells you. So yes, right. And so Lena and I, we have a rule. It gets to about day 2 or 3, and something's bothering us, and we pick up on it. The other person gets to just like flat out tell the other person, right? Like, you get a day basically to see if it's a habit or if it's a recurring pattern. And if it is, and something's bothering you, and the other person notices it, like we just kind of like bluntly ask, like, what's bothering you? Like, what the heck's wrong with you? Like, stop being.
But 2 days? Do you wait 2 days?
It's over the course of 2 days, and the reason is because sometimes you could just have a bad day.
Okay.
Right. But if you're having multiple days where you're bothered by something, or something that person is doing is bothering you, and it's annoying the heck out of you, everything in my demeanor changes. So let's say Lena does something that I'm just like, oh, why did she do that?
Yeah.
It might just be that day that she's doing it, or it actually is some sort of a habit, some sort of a pattern. You won't know that on the first instant or the first day. So we gave each other like, because there were times where it just was that day. We that person, I did something that just like normally I don't do, and it bothered the heck out of Lena. But the next day I didn't do it. But when she brought it up that night, I'm like, it's just a rough day. Like you had a long day at work or stress or whatever, right? Just whatever it could be. If I do it 2-3 days in a row, or like multiple times during those 2 days, that's a pattern. That's a habit. It could be a bad habit. And if it bothers the other person so much, you got to have some sort of a safe space to bring it up. And I think the awareness is enough for us. If the other person points it out, then we go, okay, I'll stop doing it. And we kind of agreed. And once we started living together after we got married, like, there are a lot of things people will bicker about that we just don't want to bicker about, right?
I know a lot of times people in relationships, communication is one of the biggest factors of why they end up getting into arguments, is because people assume or presume that their partner is saying something when in fact it means something else, or they're doing something without knowing that they're hurting the other partner's feelings.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take my parents, for example, okay? So my mom gets frustrated when my stepdad doesn't help around the house. And they've actually had confrontations with this before. It's like, husband, I wish you would really help me around the house, because I feel like I'm a slave. I feel like I'm just your house cleaner, right? What is the easiest and best way to approach something like that? Because that's one thing, let's face it, no one likes to be antagonized for the things that we do wrong, right? If I said, hey, Patrick, I hate the way you fold your clothes, do you automatically get defensive? You're like, whoa, what?
Listen,
So how could I, in this case, if your wife is saying, Patrick, I hate the way you fold the clothes, what is the better response for someone who is being attacked for a behavior that they don't like, that their partner doesn't like of them? Does that make sense?
It does, and this is only funny because we've had this conversation, and my initial reaction was like, hey, you're dealing with a professional retail person. Like, I worked at the Gap. I have credibility here, And she's like, go take a Gap somewhere else, In a lot of situations where you want the other person to do something, this is what we do. We look at it from a what's the most important thing, and what is it that's really lacking. So I would say, the approach to something that's very confrontational is to not assume the other person doesn't want to do it, right? And so I've heard this a lot, like, oh, I didn't do it because, whatever reason, you're so good at it, or I didn't want to disrupt you, or whatever it is. I think the other better approach is constantly asking for help, right? And so in your mom's case, it's like, oh, can you do this? Can you help out with that? And if that doesn't work, then might have to hire a cleaner. Sometimes the thing that causes the most friction between couples, especially the ones that are married and living together, might be the best one to just solve with money, because it's not that important, but it just, both of the people don't want to do it. And sometimes you just need a solution that both people can agree on. Not really a who's right, who's wrong. You should do this because, and there's a comparison nature of it, right? Like, oh, you should do it. So-and-so's husband always helps out, right? Like, our other friend, John, and a few other friends of mine, like, just because I help around the house or I cook and I clean and I fold clothes, like a lot of our friends, their wives will turn to their husband, wow, why can't you be like Patrick? And then like Lena more and me recently, like Lena would say, hey, look, you really don't want Patrick. He's not that great. Sure, he might fold some clothes, but don't get me started on all the other things that just drive me nuts about him, and and that's the reality. But I think what people do is they set expectations for their partners based on comparing other couples and relationships. And I think that goes back to even the definition of love. So if you love someone so important but you won't change for them, in my opinion, that's not unconditional love. Unconditional needs to mean you're going to change for that person.
Let's say my future ex-girlfriend says, okay, Brian, you're playing too much video games. I just don't like the fact that you always come home, after you come home from work, you just turn the TV on and you start playing video games. But that's a way for me to just relieve some stress. Sure. Am I all of a sudden supposed to just change unconditionally because it's supposed to satisfy my wife? Like, where is the compromise? Or I guess in this case, what am I supposed to do?
So totally, it's dependent. But I would say the one thing that isn't being said that you can ask is, well, what are the things you want to do when I get home, or that you need help with, or that I can do after you get home? I think those questions, they're leading questions. They're respond to me questions, right? I think those are really what will help in a relationship. It's funny. Some of that stuff comes from if you ever go on like a couples retreat, not a couple, but like a Catholic marriage encounter. One thing that they do talk about is the communication, but sometimes all that question meant is the person is in a frustration question. So the other person, you in this case, it'd be better to respond in a more open way, in a more inviting way, right? Like the other person is frustrated. They're boiled up, right? They're just like, gosh, I can't believe he comes on, turns on and plays video games,
Yeah.
If you get that question and you take a moment and you're like, oh, there's something else bothering her than just the video games. So if you have enough awareness at that moment, you can ask a really softer question, not just because it's the woman, but it could be reversed. The woman could do it to the man and ask it. In love, you got to have enough of that love to respond even more kindly, right? And so something like that's what I would say. I mean,
I actually want to add to that what you were saying. So regarding the soft questioning, right? So instead of saying, I hate the way you come home and just play video games right after work. One of the better ways to approach this is to actually express what it is that you're feeling as a result of me playing video games, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, let's say your wife or your partner or whatever, rather than saying, I hate the way you come on and play video games, I think the better way to approach it is to say, hey, I would really appreciate it if you came home and spent a few minutes with me because, you've been working all day and I've been home. Let's say if you're a stay-at-home wife or husband, I miss you. I want to see you.
Yeah.
Right? You actually have to express what it is that you want from your partner rather than the things that you don't like that he does, right? I think that's a better way to approach it, in my opinion. I don't know. Yeah, no.
And it's, especially like if you get to the point in the relationship where let's say we're going to just go with this, right? Like the wife or the girlfriend sees you come home and you're just like, oh, hey, you're home. Then your response is like, okay, I guess you don't care if I'm here or not. I'm gonna go play video games, and there's an avoidance mechanism built into that whole situation. But I think this goes into what was one of the 5 love languages? I think it's like showing affection or
it's words of affirmation, basically showing
words of affirmation, right?
Yeah,
saying something as like, "Oh, you're home," like getting excited, enthusiasm to see the other person on a regular basis every single day is it breaks down so many walls. Like even my daughter, raising her, I would be gone for like an hour or two. And I would come home and she'd be like, Daddy, it's as if like I was gone for an entire year or something, you know? Like, I'm like, oh, I just wanted to go throw out the trash. It doesn't matter. Daddy, you know, and then like my wife came too. So that feeling, the enthusiasm just breaks down so much, right? I don't even think about anything I wanted to do. So there's an enthusiasm level that, you know, and then the same reverse, you know, like when my wife does something for me, I'm like, oh, this is so great. It's amazing. She loves it when I put stuff on Facebook crediting her. Because everyone thinks she posts more than me, so everyone thinks I do so much more for her, but it's the opposite. So whenever I do one, she's like, oh, it's like it lasts for a good week or so. I think a lot of people just do that. So I would say it's that. I mean, let me ask you something. Mm-hmm. When you thought about love and even in your relationship with your ex, I brought this up, but like unconditional love, did it ever kind of have a meaning to you, or what does that mean to you? Unconditional love.
It's funny you bring this up because I know when me and Eva actually had this conversation, she's like, there's no such thing as unconditional love because there's always a condition for you to love your partner. And I remember we actually had this discussion between like you and a couple of other friends of ours. For me, I mean, obviously unconditional love, this is going to sound totally naive though.
Yeah.
Is that no matter what the partner does, you're going to love that person religiously, right? Yeah. But the problem is that doesn't necessarily always work, in my opinion, because let's say at some point, what brought you together was the initial bonds, right?
Sure.
That you guys shared, whether it was through the activities that you guys met. Let's say me and Eva met in a hiking event, and we were able to slowly grow from those experiences. But at some point, let's just face it, she started advancing her career. She started growing, maturing, if you want to call it that, where I ended up plateauing in the stage of my life.
Yeah.
And going back to conditional again, or unconditional, it's like at some point, what happens when you outgrow your partner? Right? And all of a sudden you find the things that you used to find attractive are no longer attractive to you. And that happens a lot, right? Because we met in our 20s. The things that we enjoyed doing were no longer feasible for us when we were in our 30s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so going back to your unconditional love statement, I think there are conditions, honestly.
The response I would have is that everything you thought about the definition of love, how you define love, is not really love. It's just aspects of the relationship or the personal development. So, you know, figuring this out through marriage and through having a kid and really the relationship with my wife, unconditional love gets to trust and forgiveness is what I would say. You can screw up really bad, and I screwed up, and we're not gonna get into that now, but like I screwed up pretty bad. My asking for forgiveness had to be genuine, you know, times 100, 1,000, whatever it is, to get through to her that I was truly and deeply sorry for what I did. Whether it's a small thing, whether it's a big thing, you're asking for forgiveness has to be true down to the core, right? And in aspects where it's really big, someone screws up, you know, the forgiveness and the trust to wait for the other person has to be there. This feeling of emptiness without the other person has to be there. But if you base your love on like interest, career, and personal development, I think all those relationships, they're all conditional love, like you say. Unconditional has to be, do you care if I make X amount of dollars or this amount of dollars? Like, it can't. It really can't. It has to be, you know, not based on how we live, what we have. It has to be based on literally just the two people. Unconditional love to me is also something I will say ingrained into me because of my Catholic faith, right? There's this teaching that Jesus Christ had unconditional love for men, and that's why he died for all of us. And to sacrifice yourself is, you know, a really true way of showing unconditional love. But I think day to day in our relationships, it's not sacrifice like let me change everything and be dragged down by it, but more of let me forgive you for anything that might bother me because my love for you is more. Let me change some things that you don't like about me because I want to make your relationship with me so much more better, richer, appeasable, whatever it is. I am of the opinion that unconditional love exists in between two people, especially in the bonds of marriage, right? It's a union. And
So let me ask you something.
yeah,
So just for a test, and if you feel comfortable answering this, if Lena stopped taking care of the house, she just said,
Yeah.
"You know what, Patrick, I'm tired. I just want to stay home and watch TV.
yeah.
I want, you're gonna start cooking, you're gonna start cleaning the house, and also take care of. I'll help out taking care of our daughter, but for the most part, I just don't feel like doing that stuff. I hate washing dishes. I
Yeah.
hate cooking. So you're saying that's okay?
It's gonna be indicative of something bothering her even more. It's not because she wants to stop doing that. It's because maybe like your mom, she doesn't feel valued for doing it, right? Or she feels alone when everything should be something we do together, and that's where the gap happens so much, in my opinion. Would I be okay with it? I would be okay if she had a really good reason as to what she wanted. But if she just flat out said, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm too good for this or whatever, I think there's something else.
Let's say she's I hate it. This just makes me miserable. Like, there's certain activities that we just hate to do.
Yeah.
She just hates cleaning the house. She just hates washing dishes. Like, she just hates it.
Yeah. There's a lot of different things that would go through my mind. One would be, is something else bothering her? Is she wanting to do something else? Like, she doesn't have time to even consider a career or going back to work or doing a hobby that she gets to do just for herself because she's so busy, right? For all the housewives out there, they have no time to themselves. This is like a wake-up call for every man. Coronavirus is a wake-up call. How much they do just being at home, even though they're not working technically, right? Making money work. Housework, cleaning, this as much as I do. You did a lot of this in your relationship. It takes up so much time and energy, right? And so they might just be exhausted because they don't get breaks. They don't get 15-minute breaks. They don't get an hour for lunch. Helping my wife these days because she's got nausea and stuff. Like, I've been doing everything. You don't get time to eat. You barely get time to make your own food while you're trying to feed your kid. Like, it doesn't work. It every time a housewife goes to the bathroom with a kid in the house, they take a risk. You basically leave your kid either right in front of the bathroom door, or the kid's in the bathroom with you, or you're letting the kid out around the house all by themselves. So whatever way it is, whatever age, it's a risk, right? Like, what if, and in the middle of something happens, like you're worried and you're anxious and you're stressed and you have to be 100% all the time. So for someone in a relationship to say that, there's deeper things bothering them, is my point, where they just give up. When you start to give up, it just means you've passed your breaking point long time ago and you were just on reserves and the other person just didn't know it. So I would say I wouldn't take it at face value. I would say there's something deeper. I would say there's like a lot more to unpack. And if they just need a break, they need a break. Or if they want to pursue something else, find a way. Get a babysitter, get a nanny, whatever it takes. Yeah, most of those ultimatum give up statements, there's a lot to unpack. There's so many things. And that's where openness and forgiveness, and not even forgiveness, just being, oh, I'm so sorry you're exhausted. Saying sorry you're exhausted, like that'll get you another 2 days. And not like there's a formula, but like sometimes they're just looking for affirmation that what they're doing is valuable, right? So I'll flip it around on you. Like, I remember you were doing a lot of the housework and things like that, but at some point in your relationship, did you feel like you were not valued for what you do for the relationship.
Well, for me, my contribution to the relationship, because she was making more money and she was planning our trips for us, right? Because of her, I was able to go to like all of these different countries and experience a lot of these different Michelin restaurants. So my way of contributing to the relationship was that I had to take care of her.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, right? Cooking, cleaning, making sure that there was food on the table, making sure the house was clean. That was my contribution to Eva. That this is how I'm going to show you my love, and this is how I'm going to show you that I appreciate you by making your life easier when you come home. But the
Yeah.
biggest problem for me was that I wasn't necessarily getting my needs met, right?
Sure.
I mean, I'm granted I'm going through all these fancy trips, but I wasn't getting the quality time. I wasn't getting the
Yeah.
affirmation and appreciation that, sometimes all we want, especially wives, is just to say thanks for preparing dinner. Like, I know technically it's our job, right? It was my job to make sure that we had food, but we still like to hear like, the food was great, honey. Thanks for,
Yeah.
where'd you make this recipe? We just like to be appreciated for the things
Yeah.
that we are supposed to do regardless.
Yeah. And that's why when you get married, people tend to start to focus on the little things, and it just doesn't make sense to focus on those when you're thinking about love. The toothpaste problem, and whether you squeeze from the bottom or from the middle, it doesn't matter. Everyone's gonna get toothpaste, right? Like that shouldn't break a marriage. That shouldn't break love. I mean, if your love is so fragile that toothpaste is gonna break it, then you got to really consider, is that true love? Is that really the depth of your love? And for me, a lot of it came when you get married, and it's something that we picked up in a Catholic marriage preparation course before. And there was a phrase that they said that just stuck with me so much, and we have it on our refrigerator. Love is a daily decision. A lot of people, they think they fall in love and that'll just carry them for the rest of their couple's lives. And you go through the marriage, and you do the wedding day, and you think that's it. That's all you need to put the effort. You put all the effort, you got there. It's like the finish line. And it isn't. That's like, when people say the journey starts, okay, but love is a daily decision. So once you get married, once you fall in love, every day you have to wake up and choose to love the other person. If you have other decisions that you put in front of loving the other person, then you have to start to consider, am I doing this intentionally? Is it a pattern? Is it something deeper? Especially if it's recurring and ongoing, right? Every day you're like, oh, I don't even want to think about that person or whatever. I mean, you could have a bad day, but if you're going weeks and you're not even thinking about that person, you're not even saying, I love that other person internally. This isn't turning to your partner and go, oh, good morning, boo-boo. Like, I love you. No, it's not that. This is internal to your own heart. Like, you have to make that decision. And it's a decision that you have to own up and live up to.
So you're saying you would already know, right? Like, the minute you wake up, you should know already that you want to spend the rest of your life with this person. And if you're saying if you're having doubts already, then that's not good.
Doubts are okay to a certain point, but when the doubts stay and they linger, right? And you could always question your partner, your marriage, whatever, your love. You challenge your love in the relationship. That's okay. The thing that you don't want to do is get complacent of you've given enough. I've already done this for the relationship. Now it's the other person's turn. That's just a transaction. That's not really love. But when we say love is a daily decision, what it means also is making a choice and making that choice active every single day. Similar to like diets or overcoming addiction. They say one day at a time. It's a similar concept. You have to do it every single day because it's not like there's a bank of love. And so I think that's just something that's really important. And the other thing I think that comes with when you love someone is forgiveness. If you have no room in your heart to forgive the other person, you're not going to get that far. No matter what they do, depending on what they do. forgiveness through everything is going to really open yourself up to the other person, to the love of the other person. And that's really important. But I mean, like for you, Brian, what are you looking for with love right now? Because you're in a completely different situation, environment than I'm in. Where are you at?
It's funny you say that actually, because like I said before, it's been 2 years since, almost 2 years since me and my ex separated. And I know in the beginning, the first immediate reaction that I want to do is just to find another girlfriend immediately, because a lot of that was having a sense of belonging, feeling like I was capable and worthy of receiving love by another person. But then I realized that it was way too early for me to just jump back into a new relationship, considering that mine just ended like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, right? That's pretty much almost anyone's response to when they get separated from a long-term relationship. They just want to jump into a new relationship right away because they miss that feeling of companionship.
Yeah.
And to answer your question on what I'm looking for right now, it's honestly, I don't know. I can't answer this. Like, I want to say that I think I know what I want, but at the same time, I don't. Like, I want a partner. I want all the cliche examples. I want a partner who's going to be there for you. I want a partner who's going to share the same activities that I like to do. Mm-hmm. I want to have a partner who's also intellectual, who's also, attractive in my eyes, and just someone that I feel could improve my overall quality of life, as well as to continue to push me to being a better person. Yeah. And I mean, ideally, that's someone that I would want in my life. And so, but as of right now, I just don't feel it yet. I still don't feel ready. And I'm not sure if that's because I'm afraid. It's hard to say because I'm afraid of being hurt again. This is why I'm holding myself back. And so that's my answer, bud.
And I think, having even been in a similar situation as you, getting over whatever your ex or so, and a lot of people even, relating to you being in that situation, I would say you won't know why you're feeling that until afterwards. Until after you maybe are in a relationship or you have another milestone in your life and you look back, you're like, oh, that's why I was like that. So I think what you first said was absolutely correct. You don't know. And you won't know until you have a moment where you can look back and you're like, oh, that's why I was like that. So the fact that you're feeling that right now, you're not feeling anything, that's totally fine. That's totally normal. And it's points like that why you should continue listening to the Introspection Hour with Brian and Patrick. So catch us next week for another episode, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for listening, guys.